Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and today I have with me Nikki Reid, founder and CEO of Nikki Homes. Welcome to you, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
And David Galman, property consultant and previously director of Galliard Homes. Welcome to you, David.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to be answering your questions right away. So, Nikki, your first question. With an ever increasing amount of legislation and regulation in the letting market, do the panel think it will encourage specialist agencies rather than the conventional agency which deals with sales, letting and management? It does seem that property finance market has gone that way, for example, with buy-to-let lenders and bridgers. So are we going to see a more specialist profession?
I think that the letting industry in general needs a heck of a lot more legislation. Obviously, I'm a landlady and an agent. There are, though, over 180 legislations in lettings. And if I wasn't a letting agent, I probably would never manage my own portfolio now, because you have to know what you're doing. But the scary thing is that anybody can be a letting agent tomorrow and go, I'm just going to open a letting agency. That's my job. And have no qualifications, no experience, not know what they're doing.
If you want to be an agent, as long as you can breathe, you've got the job, haven't you?
And that's terrifying, because lettings in particular is worse, because sales side of the market, at least you've got solicitors involved. Letting agents, it's purely down to that letting agent to make sure that, for example, every document has been served correctly on occupation on that tenancy. Otherwise, you go to court and you cannot get a court order and you cannot get your tenant out. And the letting agent will just go, oh, sorry, I got it wrong.
But I do see there's a greater use of technology now, isn't there? We have on the programme one or two very specialist software firms, and the software that you can buy, if you do so, it's quite fantastic in the way that it manages the sort of letting business, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yes and no. I'm very old school in the sense of we have a software even that will generate tenancy agreements, and I'll still read every single tenancy agreement. That sounds a bit like a control freak, but I will literally read every tenancy agreement and cross-check it.
Do you have one of those things with beads on to do the counting? Or?
No, I don't have that. But yeah, I will read it and I will put special clauses in for my landlords. I'll check everything and cross-check everything, because ultimately, it's a bit like, if a landlord's lived in a property before, you can evict them under a special clause. But if you forget to put that clause into that letting agreement, you can't evict them. So all of that stuff, not being funny, but if you've just got a letting employee, there's not big money in lettings. That's the thing. Are they going to be due diligent enough to know every law? Because we almost are solicitors without the payment.
So do you welcome the new, well, I was going to say new legislation, but it seems to have been put back yet again, this new letting sort of regime. Do you welcome the new regulations?
You're talking about so there's two new legislations going through at the moment. You've got the Renters Reform Bill, which is coming through. And then you've also got legislation coming in that letting agents are going to have to be qualified to be a letting agent, which, yes, I think that's brilliant. The Renters Reform Bill, the bit where they're looking at with regards to landlords having to have qualifications, I think that's great as well, because landlords that self-manage are the ones that tend to get themselves in trouble, because they think it's really easy and it's just like, oh, just stick a tenant in my property and like, oh, I won't worry about anything else and don't need to worry about the law, forget to renew my gas safety certificate, forget to do my EPC, all of those things. And that's where the problem comes from, and that's what creates the bad image in the marketplace. So I think that's where the government want either proper letting agents in control of the letting stock, or if you're going to be a landlord, a corporate landlord or a commercial landlord, rather than a private individual that goes and buys a tenancy agreement from WH Smith's.
Okay, and where's the qualification going to come from?
The legislation is going to come through ALA.
Is it?
Yeah, so you're going to have to be qualified through ALA, or at least have one team member qualified through ALA that'll be heading that letting department in a company. Okay,
I'll forgive you if you don't know the answer to this, because it was only altered this week, apparently. Rishi Sunak says that compulsory insulation standards that were going to come in 28 have now been scrapped. His wording was for private properties, private let properties. Now, does that mean then that all these people that have started to sell their buy-to-let properties because they're fed up with government legislation and didn't think they'd be able to meet the insulation standards have wasted their time selling? Because it's been scrapped. Does it apply to normal landlords?
No, because we haven't had landlords sell up because of insulation. We've had landlords sell up because of regulation.
Yeah, but does his negation of that regulation coming in 2028 mean that none of the landlords are going to have to meet that criteria?
Don't know, it hasn't been clarified. But what I do know is, obviously, with regards to that EPC exemptions, if an oil property, it's very hard to get an oil property, for example, into a D rating EPC. Normally there'll be an E. But what you can do is apply for an exemption.
Right.
So you apply for an exemption. Because, for example, if you need cavity wall insulation and you haven't got a cavity, well, how are you going to put cavity wall insulation, no cavity? So,
well, I think the whole legislation was poorly thought through, to be honest, don't you, David?
Yeah, it didn't take the right advice from the right people yet again.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of the course, isn't it? Okay, all right, thank you for that, Nikki. David, there is much interest in the property press about the merits and otherwise of modular construction methods and how they may speed up the provision of new homes. Do the panel agree with this, and could they comment on the comparable pricing against conventional construction methods? And is there a genuine saving on time?
There should be. There should be a genuine saving on time, and there should be a genuine saving on cost. And there is no doubt that if you can create the correct modular product, build it off-site, deliver it to site, fit it like a kit in reality, then it should be less expensive to build and to be able to build it quicker. The problem comes down to funding, in that developers are not going to be in a position where they have to pay 75% upfront to the modular company to produce the product, because they won't get that funding from their own banks. And that's where the glitch lies at the moment.
Yeah. And is there a sort of percentage difference in cost? Would it save 10%, 20%?
I've been told, and I don't know whether it's true or not, and I don't know how many people have actually done the sums properly, that you can save up to 15 to 20%, which is huge. But that saving isn't just on the cost, that's because of the timing as well. So if you're doing it quicker, therefore your holding costs are lower.
Does it also mean, though, that we need a different set of skills on site?
Very possibly. Well, you just need to be like a Meccano fitter on site, don't you? Just to plug in and go.
Yeah. It's quite complex, isn't it? I just wonder how you go on with the sort of warranty situation, who's guaranteeing what, whether the builder's guaranteeing it, whether the modular company's guaranteeing it.
Well, it could be a very muddied water, couldn't it? Because you've got the developer, you've got the contractor who is an off-site contractor, and then who are the likes of NHBC and BLP, who are they going to actually look to give the warranty to? Could be quite interesting.
I mean, you've done some sort of massive construction works around here. I mean, is this modular business something that you relish?
Not really.
No,
I don't think so. I think it's also going to damage employment as well at the end of the day. You know, you see these developments where they're building 37-story towers with sort of 400 flats in them. They might have, on a good day, 750 people working in them.
Yeah.
You're not going to need that if you're building it modular.
No. I mean, again, I just think that, what do? You just, when you have a high building, I mean, some of these buildings down here now, 70 stories is the norm, isn't it? Now?
Seems to be, yeah.
Do you just crane all this stuff in, do you? Or I don't know.
I don't know, I've not looked at it, but I suppose how else do you do it? Yeah, because if you're building it like a concertina going up, aren't you, I suppose?
Yeah. The reason I asked that question, I just wonder whether some of the logistics actually take some of the benefit away from the saving, if you like.
Well, they might do, mightn't they?
Yeah. But I think this business of funding, again, is a difficult one, isn't it? As you say, the modular companies are going to want paying for their stuff up front, probably before they even deliver it.
Well, they will do, and if they haven't got a track record, and they can't give you a bond that's worth anything, then the banks are not going to fund it. Developers haven't got the funding there to do it.
Well, I've always thought bonds are a very difficult thing because the money gets blocked anyway, doesn't it?
Generally, yeah.
You might as well pay at the end of the day. You got anything to add to that, Nikki?
No, I think it's interesting though what you're saying about trades, etc. Because obviously you're going to have to be more specialists, and actually they're actually talking about a shortage in trades in the next few years, aren't they? Because everyone wants to be social media influencers, etc. Because everyone is going media based and doing more, things like that, like Instagram, TikTok, etc. I think trades are going to be in short supply anyway. So then if you're trying to find a specialist trade, it's going to be even more short supply.
Yeah.
So that's going to be even more expensive because you're going to have to pay even more money for any bigger specialists.
And I don't know whether it'll take some of the flexibility out of design. I mean, if you take one of the firms that built this block at the back here, what they will do as an exchange incentive, they'll say you're allowed to choose this, this, this and this for the specification of your kitchen and your bathroom. Whereas if these things are being manufactured in bulk off-site, you're not going to have that flexibility.
You won't have that at all, will you? Because when are you going to make that decision? You've got to make it so much earlier in the piece.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you both very much. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show, so join me again after the break. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time with Nikki Reid and David Galman. Welcome back. And Nikki, with many agents realising that high-value homes realise much higher fees for the same amount of work as a low-cost home, do the experts think we'll see over a period of time a clear division between the online no-frills agencies and perhaps the conventional high street agent?
I completely and utterly disagree with that question.
Do you?
To be honest
go
with
on
you. I do, yeah. I think it's a bad public opinion that the same amount of work for a low-cost house, the same amount of work for a high-value property. And that's because we failed to educate them correctly on what actually is involved.
So what's the difference?
With a high-end property to a lower-end property. Marketing to start with. So you will spend an absolute fortune. If you're a good agent, you'll spend an absolute fortune on your marketing because ultimately people are spending an awful lot of money. So your marketing needs to be on point, and that means spending thousands of pounds to make sure that it looks like a property that's worth that value. And also doing other things rather than just sticking it on the portal. So you need to obviously spend and invest money into other areas. Your buyers are different. A lot of buyers in the higher end of the market are very busy people, possibly directors of companies, not able to talk to you on a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 basis. You need to be available to them at weekends and evenings. That is a really normal thing in the high-end market, and they expect a much more personal service.
Doesn't that cost more money?
What, to do that? Yeah, well, it does. It costs more money in the time, doesn't it?
So you want a higher fee?
Yeah.
So you do get a higher fee value off a more expensive property?
Yeah, but you earn your higher fee.
I'm not saying you don't earn it. I'm saying do you get it?
You do, yes, you do get it. But I think what I'm saying is that it's deserved. It's not, people think that it's less, you don't need to earn, the same fee for a higher value property. But if you're a good agent, then you do because
Yes, but I mean, I read up on our contributors' sort of history and modus operandi, and you're involved with spreading your agency net by being involved with somebody in London, which is a sort of franchise, if you like. And part of their ethos is that they will try and educate their franchisees to go for the higher end property because the reward is that much higher for the same amount of work, because it does take the same amount of work to a degree to make that lower end property work. And I think the question is asking here is that lower price property better off being sold, on the sort of, we won't mention the colour of the bricks, but that sort of operation? Is it better being sold by them? Perhaps they're more effective that way. Perhaps at that lower end of the market, both the buyer and the seller are prepared to almost do their own viewings, to do their own sort of advisory service, in a very limited way. Whereas you're right, at the top end of the market, the buyer wants A1 service, and also the seller wants to feel that they're with a super pucker agency that's selling their property.
No, because I still think it's irrelevant. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question.
Go on then.
Would you let Jill, your doctor's receptionist, give you heart surgery rather than a heart surgeon?
Well, I was going to say, I won't give you the answer I was going to give you, but no, the answer is no. But I think you're actually emphasising the question. Are these two different areas of agency?
No.
You don't think so?
And 99% of the time, most people, the biggest thing you'll ever own is a property. So
Okay, well,
it's the biggest amount of money.
Let me just re-ask it in a different way then. Where we're based here, you've got a clear social division between the bottom end of this postcode down that away and this Canary Wharf end. I mean, I was talking to the doctor's surgery and they were saying it's quite funny really. Down that end, type 2 diabetes is absolutely rampant. Up this end it's not, and it's because of the dietary choices that people make, and if they haven't got a lot of money, often they're forced into buying non-fresh food, you know, more processed food, more frozen foods, that sort of thing. And the same thing happens in housing. They're two different markets to a degree. And I think that the thinking behind the question is, are these two separate markets capable of being serviced by the same agent? Yeah. Is the guy that wants to sell his £2 million penthouse happy with the agent that's also selling an ex-social homes house down the bottom here?
Yes, because the guy that owns a £2 million penthouse might also be selling his ex-social housing house that was a buy-to-let. So he can have the same agent that has the same knowledge and experience and someone that he knows and trusts. So
I think we're going to have to agree to differ on this.
Steve, you're harping back to the days when the big boys came down to this area, which was basically very simple East London.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to deal with the lower priced developments down here.
And also I can remember, you know, when we, you know, these very high-rise buildings, you know, the 40, 50, 60, 70-storey ones were quite unusual in London sort of 15, 20 years ago, at this point where the big agents came down here. And I mean, I can remember working for one of them, and, you know, they'd refer to these sort of things as specialist blocks of flats, you know, rather than you know, whatever the current terminology is. But they were very snooty about it and really didn't understand even this market.
I think that's disappeared a lot though now.
It has.
I think that snootiness has gone.
But I still just wonder whether you know, the two extremes of the market are compatible. And I know the particular franchise that I was referring to with you, they're very keen to promote the higher end because of that income stream, and their view is that it doesn't mix terribly well.
But within the same companies, you have different people that deal with things. You know, there's certain big agents that we know that will have a team that only deal with super prime, whatever super prime is, and then the team that deal with stuff not less than £2 million, not more than £2 million. So you do have different teams within those companies.
But again, Dave, you know, you're talking about teams, so you need an agency big enough to be able to run teams. Yeah. You know, that's the difficulty.
Yeah, I think people buy from people again, though. Yeah. So, you know, if you build a rapport with that agent and you trust that agent, I don't see the difference in them selling a £200,000 house to a £2.5 million house. It's about that agent trust that you've
We'll
got.
agree to slightly differ then. How's that? Okay, David. With property sales and pricing on a downwards trend, with the imposition of higher interest rates, has it become more difficult for developers to secure construction finance? If so, I guess this is going to aggravate the shortage of housing in the UK.
Seems to be the same answer always, doesn't it? That funding is key for developers to be able to construct these large-scale developments, and to get bank finance at the moment is incredibly expensive to do so.
Expensive or difficult?
Both.
Both.
It's definitely expensive, which makes it difficult, because therefore it makes a lot of schemes much less viable than perhaps they were 12, 18 months ago. And that's where the big difference is. So you will have developers at the moment that will perhaps sitting on a piece of land that when they purchased it, the viability worked because they put their calc in as a borrowing at a certain rate, and now they're borrowing at 2 to 3 times as much as that. And of course, it makes the development not work. That is why there are so fewer startups at the moment. Yeah,
and I think again, I mean, the government were accusing developments of sort of land banking, weren't they, causing the problem? And I don't really think that's the case, because I think if you've got land banked, you'll be looking at the viability of that site on a sort of monthly or quarterly basis to find the optimum starting point, won't you?
It's just too expensive to land bank anyway. You can't hold it and do nothing with it. You do need to be developing it and trying to realise its end value.
And, you know, I mean, Nikki will know this now, there's a lot of specialist lenders like buy-to-let lenders, bridging lenders, small commercial property lenders. Do you find that the development finance field is getting to be specialist? So in other words, if you're building 70 stories here, but a housing estate over there with single unit houses, would you be using the same financier?
Probably different banks, different horses for courses is the reality of it. So the large international banks would be taking on a 70-story tower because they can see the asset value at the end of the day. And you might be able to go to a clearing bank or to an old-fashioned merchant bank style to develop a housing estate. Yeah,
I still say I think the better days are when we had specialist property lenders, i.e. the building societies. They really knew the business, they really knew the local area. You know, you went to them for an application for a mortgage, you know, they'd know more about you than you did. You know, they'd know about the factory that you worked in or the office you worked in. They'd know who was building up the road and what it was going to be like. And
doesn't that go back to Nikki's point that it's all about people?
Well,
I
I think
about
that's
people.
right to a degree, yeah. Specialist knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you to you both very much indeed for coming in. Great answers to the questions. I don't think we're wildly apart, are we? But there we are. It's good. It's good to have healthy conversation about these matters, and I'm sure it's been very helpful for our viewers. So thank you both.
Pleasure.
Okay, so thank you to Nikki Reid, founder of Nikki Homes, and David Galman, property consultant. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.